next, you won't believe what's going to happen.
It's time for the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
Welcome to another Summit Sessions. This is your boy, Andrew Plaw, at Andrew Plaw Tech. And I met a friend just now, man. Adam Rivera. Welcome to the podcast, man. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. It's my third day here at PowerShell Summit, and I'm in the on-ramp program. And I've just been learning a ton and meeting. I mean, this has just been a very, very cool experience for me. I've met some legends in the field that I don't know. It's just a great experience.
Yeah, man. So I just ran into you at the bar. You said, hey, and oh, man, I'm so glad we got to meet each other because we're a few days into it. I'd like to hear, how'd you hear about the summit? You know, give me a little bit of background on that.
Yeah. So, I feel like I've been sleeping on PowerShell for a while, and I was an IT manager, and I was like, man, I really need to learn PowerShell and take advantage of all this automation. So like any normal human being, I was like, hey, let's find a podcast. And here was Andrew, and he started talking about Summit, and that they had an on-ramp program, and I don't know, it's just stars align there. So here I am, and I love it.
Connecting those dots from like online and our work, and we're typing, and then you see the flesh and like actual person, and you're like, oh, they have a story. They're not just a face on the screen kind of thing. You know, there's more to it than that. So it's really awesome about being at a conference.
Yep. And I was kind of surprised too. Like I thought all these guys were going to be like master's degrees, computer science guys. And some of them, some really influential people are just, kind of come from different ways, and they just found their way into this field, and they're masters now. So it's really cool.
Yeah, it really is, because I think tech is cool in the way that it can empower you to do a lot without having a degree. I didn't finish. I dropped out because I got a job and had to focus on that. But I didn't end up going back because I saw the path of like, oh, eventually if you learn to code and you learn to like multiply your efforts and get good enough, like you can kind of force it to happen. I've found that it has been challenging at times. You really got to sell that story of like why you deserve trust and opportunity, but it's very empowering to see there's like a bunch of success stories, people who've been able to do it successfully, and we can sort of emulate that to a certain extent.
Yeah. In my journey, personally, I've found myself wanting to be in the trenches. I don't want to be in meetings all day. I want to make effective changes to my environment and be a key player, and also empower people underneath me to be key players as well. And, PowerShell just kind of enables us to do that. And there's a lot of potential, especially based on your industry. I come from finance, so I have a lot of accountants that literally live in Excel, and they're doing just processes the same repeatedly. And I'm just like, hey, let me take that hour down to a couple minutes,
Yeah.
And make your life easier.
Small steps at a time. Take control of your work environment. I love taking control of the work environment thing because, like, okay, it's a thing that gives us money. That's great. We need to take care of that career thing. But also the thing we do more than seeing our family, the job thing, right? Like the hours works out to where that's a big chunk of your life. Let's make that experience good.
Yeah.
Like, think about the improvement to the quality of life if we were to focus more on that.
Quality of life is everything. I mean, everybody has their own plans as far as family goes or partners go, and maybe you have kids, maybe you don't, but you don't want to spend more than, half your day working for, your job. You want to be able to improve processes. You want to be able to streamline.
Yeah.
You want that scalability, especially if you're training people underneath you someday. You want to be able to show them the ropes and in a good way.
Yep. So on-ramp this week, how's it been? We're 3 days in. Any lessons or sessions that kind of stick out to you?
Yeah, I knew this was going to be pretty overwhelming for me coming into it because, I knew I had a lot to learn. But I got to say, like, I've had the best instructors that you could ever imagine. And they've been presenting the material in a way that, I couldn't ask for better. So, if you are interested in coming to Summit, especially interested in on-ramp, I would highly recommend it. I've had people that were pretty advanced in the on-ramp program. So, even if you kind of feel like you've touched on a few subjects, you're still more than welcome in this program, and you're going to learn something.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing where it's been around for a little bit, and they've refined the process over the years, learning from feedback. And it's cool to hear that it sounds like it's in a pretty good spot, because I've talked to a few people in on-ramp who have heard about it from the pod, and I want it to be a good experience for them.
Yeah, the first day they kind of had everybody raise their hand on who is new to this conference in general, whether on-ramp or not. And there was a good amount of people that raised their hands. So I'm excited about the future of the community. I'm excited about how it's going to grow, and it should grow, because this is key information, I think, for anybody working in IT or in project management either. I mean, there's definitely something you can gain out of this conference.
100%. And one thing that I really enjoyed was being able to connect with other people with perspectives and being able to have your experiences validated. And you mentioned earlier before we started recording that you sort of haven't socialized as much, but now here we are tonight. What's that been like for you to kind of grow and come out of your shell as the week goes on while dealing with learning all day long and seeing hundreds of people?
Yeah, so I came in as honestly a PowerShell newbie. I didn't understand a lot of the even basics of PowerShell and how to write commands. I mean, I kind of came from bash script days, and there's similarities, but there's differences there. But so, yeah, the first couple days were a little overwhelming. I definitely kind of kept to myself the first couple days just because I wanted to remember what I was taught. Yep. But everybody, and I mean everybody, from the instructors down to the people you have lunch with or breakfast with on a day-to-day, I mean, everybody is just interested to get to know you and more interested in welcoming you to the community.
So you're feeling fired up, you're here, you're seeing people, you're meeting folks you knew beforehand. Going forward, what's it look like for you? Are you going to start, diving into PowerShell more? Are you going to do what?
Yeah, like I said, I'm more down in the trenches kind of type, so I'm not really going to be, I don't really want to be on the development level where I'm just kind of writing applications or stuff like that. I want to write scripts. I want to write automations that really save my users time.
Yeah.
I want to make the environment better. I want to bring, especially in this age, automation is a big thing, and I just want to make that accessible to my users on a larger scale, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like you want to use the opportunity you have at an organization to do things to the best level possible and learn a ton of stuff along the way and have a good time. And now be connected to the community. I know you listen to the pod. I got some challenges for you, my man. I want you to find a community away. If it's discord.gg/PDQ, checking out PowerShell Wednesdays and connecting and just letting me know. You don't have to chime in every time, but I want to know your username. I want to see you there. I want to check in with you occasionally, because you mentioned PowerShell newbie. There's a lot of PowerShell newbies listening to the podcast. And guess what, friends? I want to help you. I want to know what you want to learn. I want to be able to cater to you to bring up the next generation. I'm getting old in terms of PowerShell years. I want to make sure that we have a healthy amount of people who are pushing to those higher levels and being able to bring up others.
Yeah, and I feel that fire myself, because I definitely am a newbie right now today. But when I am able to mentor and help people come up from where I'm at today to where they need to be, I'm 100% behind that. I believe in this community, and I look forward to the conference and everything else. Yeah.
Yep. Stay in touch. What a pleasure speaking to you, getting to meet you. I really do appreciate you taking that step, because I know it's awkward to people you've known before. You have an image of them, and then you see them in real life, and you're like, oh, do I say anything? And I appreciate you for taking that risk, coming up to me, and I hope it was a good experience for you. I'm very thankful. It's nice when I can connect dots and see like the impact.
Oh, yeah. I didn't have to find Andrew. He was in the hotel lobby here, and it's just, that's how it is. You know, you're going to run into people that you wouldn't think you'd run into, but here they are, and you should come. You should definitely come.
Awesome, Adam. Thank you for joining me, man. Welcome to another PowerShell Summit sessions, bar session, just wrap up on the week with Asmar Fontenot, first timer at PowerShell Summit. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm having a great time.
We've been kicking it off, a lot of conversations. We were recording some interviews that will be heard just before this one together, and the vibes have been high tonight, man. We're 3 days into it.
Yeah.
It's been great to connect with so many people, meet people like you, and just so many new faces I've never seen before. Right? New people to the community who are fired up, who are inspired, who are making realizations about sort of their journey and what's next for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great time. I mean, you think 3 days into a conference, and, in a different city doing different things. You're not doing your normal day-to-day work, but, people here are excited, getting up in the morning, going to all the sessions of the whole day. I didn't expect that, right? But you're seeing things, and part of it is like there's just this excitement that's palpable to me. My first time being here, I know there's people who've been here before and know what to expect, but you're meeting people throughout the week. One of the most exciting things and fun things I've been experiencing has been, like, for example, meeting you, having a conversation, meeting people in a session, and you start talking shop, and then realizing, oh, they're speaking. They're speaking tomorrow on intra ID versus graph. They're speaking tomorrow on PS script analyzer and optimizing. So it's like really cool content that you can engage in and really deep dive into. I think part of that, though, what I didn't expect out of this was I'm thinking, okay, it's my first PowerShell conference. Is going to be focused on technical learning and getting all this technical experience, but so much of this has been about also looking after us as members of this community, and kind of everybody checks on you. Hey, how's it going? How are you doing? How are things going? How is PowerShell, shaping what you do? And a lot of advice, a lot of great talks about looking beyond our next task to, what's next for us and growing as engineers in this space. That's the parts that's kind of surprised me, and so much focus on, career development and just development of ourselves as individuals and members of this community.
More than just the zeros and ones.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been more than that. And that, sometimes you think about that stuff, like, okay, it's just fluff, but no, that's been some of the best stuff.
Now, you mentioned takeaways and like journeys and next step. Going into tomorrow with where you are now, what do you feel like your next step is? What's next for you on your journey?
Wow. I think there is a few things. I think I have a little more focus and, got some great talks and some great advice. I think the first thing that I'm doing is taking advantage of this opportunity, the network, all the people I've been talking to, and making those connections, right? Actually doing those things like that we hear about in the keynote and getting a mentor. I think I talked to, I believe it's Phil Bossman. Phil Bossman. And so when you see around a lot, he's helping everybody, he's doing all these things and getting us involved. And then, so I said, and Snover said, hey, ask someone to be a mentor. I said, Phil, we're talking about some stuff that I have questions about. Will you be my mentor? He said, yes. So yeah, things like that, man, has been very, 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 very powerful.
I think part of the cool thing about coming to something like this, and like you say, you're sitting next to people, speakers, communicating, you kind of realize that they're just normal people.
Yes, for sure.
And sort of for me, whenever I first started coming, I found like a sense of belonging and like, oh my gosh, there are people, all different types, all different people who feel comfortable being themselves. In my first year, my biggest takeaway was like, oh my gosh, it was so awesome to see people being comfortable being themselves.
Right.
And people that I can resonate and relate to.
Exactly.
And something that we kind of talked about wanting to talk about was like having many interests. You know, as a child, I had many interests, but it was turned into like, people would call it my obsessions. What's Andrew's latest obsession? And I didn't like that language. I felt like, oh, what? This is like part of what makes me good. And then as an adult, now being in tech and seeing so many other people with that sort of curiosity driven, diving into things and to kind of come full circle on it and now feel like it's an asset and to be able to embrace it and to talk to you who you also have a lot of interests, right?
Yeah, that's true. I say I'm a man of many interests, right? And I also say I'm a jack of all trades. And that could be looked upon, as a weakness. And especially, I would say you go back maybe 10, 15 years in the IT industry and you're looking at advancing. And I think what happens is when you go to a thing like this, you realize, it sounds real cliche and corny, but you realize you're not alone, right? You realize there is oftentimes we're working on these projects on small teams, or maybe we're the only person that's like trying to learn about PowerShell, get into automation, do these kind of things. And you're learning these things kind of on your own. But then you get into this kind of environment and you realize, no, there are other people, there's a community and family here. And, back then I looked upon trying to advance my career meant I needed to specialize in something, right? You would look at these high level certifications, the Cisco one and other ones, think I need to specialize. That's where you get the money. You go into, you could be a family doctor, you could be a cardiologist, right? But because of my experience, my environment, I was in a smaller shop. And because I was in a smaller shop, we had to manage everything. We called ourselves the IT all department. We did everything except for the development. So we were dealing with, network, security, database, all kinds of administration. So we had to have a broad set of skills and couldn't really go deep in a whole lot of things. And I really felt that was kind of like a drawback or a negative. But when we got to the cloud and started to migrate to the cloud, all of a sudden that broadness became my greatest strength.
Yeah.
And became where I had no problem grasping what was happening. Because what happened in that first transition when people migrated to the cloud, there was a little bit of a dissonance there, a little bit of a difference of how things work. And you had to kind of understand, if you were just a database guy, it's going to be tough because you're going to be trying to spin up things, have a solution. When you're dealing with even making a VM, you couldn't just be the OS guy. You had to understand about networking, understand about different aspects of the stack. And so it became one of my greatest strengths, having a broad knowledge. And then PowerShell often also helps with that because of its nature, of its accessibility, right? You can manage all aspects, within PowerShell. So it just further added onto that breadth of knowledge, which I think is very powerful. And it's like a necessary skill, especially moving to the cloud.
I think you mentioned having that jack of all trades perspective. I think I like to use this as an example to highlight that all perspectives are valuable. Your jack of all trades perspective, I have a similar kind of background, small shop, doing a lot of things. Those people who have really honed in on one thing, they can do a ton for a team as well if you're working on that particular technology.
For sure.
And when you combine all these different perspectives together,
right,
well, all of a sudden there's more unison, there's more harmony. And that applies to, working with a team, but in every way. If you're trying to learn, find your ways to teach others. That's the best way to learn. Yeah. You're trying to get connected with the community, find your ways to do that. You earlier said, you got to find out being here, you're not alone. And I think that there's a difference between, consciously, a lot of us can think, I know I'm not alone. There's a lot of, it's different when you feel it.
Yeah.
And you see it in person and there's face to face. There's something special about that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, my first night here, not knowing what to expect, I was really kind of surprised, a little shell shocked, a little, I may even say a little starstruck, right? Because, I got to meet some people that, that in my eyes, these are people that I've been reading and watching and seeing for years. And just that effect of, here they are, they're right in front of me and we're talking. And then you kind of do get that realize, these are, of course, we understand at one level, we're all people, just regular people. But we also realize, hey, these are people you also feel like they've been on the journey with you, right? Because, you read that book, you learned that principle, you read 30 Days of Lunches, or you read about tool making. This is part of what, the journey that you went on, and you were with this too. You've gone through the figuring out, the ins and outs of PowerShell, the nuances, the intricacies, and things like that. Yeah. And so that was a huge part of it, because it really did help me realize that this is part of a true community, that they're really, the people here are really, we're all like rooting for each other, right? And all like sharing in this knowledge that, of this tool. And really this tool, PowerShell, is really, that's what it's about. It is a tool that we all just like, but it all serves a higher purpose, a different purpose, right? It's not just about, we're not doing PowerShell for the sake of PowerShell, right? This is a method that we are using to add more value to our businesses, to do things that excite us, to do things that help our users or help, the public in different ways, right? And so, it's an exciting and it's a powerful thing, right?
I think, you mentioned like the kind of trickle down of one person helps another and then another. It's so interesting to see it. To me, it's like, I think it's called the butterfly effect, where it's like one thing, I think a butterfly dies and the whole world changes.
Whole world changes,
And it trickles down and it's all interconnected. There've been some folks who are very new to the community who haven't contributed much. And I've talked to them and heard, some feedback, and I've seen others give good feedback to other people. And, that is actually really valuable. That is the start of it. If you see someone putting themselves out there and you get value out of it, tell them, because that's going to be part of the motivation that they take going forward. You'd be surprised how far a little bit of genuine kindness goes.
Right. I mean, it is. I think that's why it's important. That's what a lot of what I'm getting out of this experience is realizing, when you are a person who's part of this community, in the sense that, you're using the tools, you're learning, you're on the forums, you're downloading, you're doing these things, and you see and respect the work that people are putting into this. But you think, that's not me. I can't do that. But then you get here and you realize, you know what? I can do that. There's something I can contribute, right? There's something that I can do, that there's something that I know that someone else doesn't know. And there's some little thing I can do to make someone else's life and job easier. Because we were having a conversation, and I was thinking back to like that first PowerShell module that, to me, that I downloaded that really like helped me in my everyday life, And if that person never did that, and for me, I think it's called NTFS security. It was like a module that helps manage like NTFS permissions, right? And it was such an important part, because it, first of all, helped me understand PowerShell better, right? So I understood a module, how to do it, how to use it. How to give me value, how to implement it in the script and things like that. And then, and it became something that was provided by the community that added value, because I did learn how to do the same tasks myself. I was like, why reinvent this wheel, right? This was difficult for me at the time, and this helped make things better. And I thought, that whole idea of giving back, you realize, you know what? I was helped along the way. I want to help somebody else, right? Yep. There's somebody else doing this little thing that I'm doing too, and I could make a module, I could make a script, I could help with that. And that's okay if one person downloads it, right?
Yep. Your perspective is valuable. If you're a jack of all trades, if you're whatever you are, you have a different background, you don't have a college degree, whatever it is, your perspective is valuable to inform those around you. But also, there's going to be someone else out there with a similar, they need to hear your message and your story. They don't need to hear mine. They don't need to hear so-and-so's. Everyone's journey and story and perspective is different. And it is so valuable. If we all had the same one, we'd be worse off for it.
Right.
I want to say, you mentioned being part of this community, and I want to tell everyone out there, if you want to be part of the community, you hear all this good vibes, you hear this awesome stuff from all these different people, you hear these repeated tropes of positivity, of community. If you want to join it, join it. You are welcome to join it. And as someone who's newer to the community, how has it been? Have you felt welcomed? What message do you have out there for people who are kind of, it's scary to do social stuff and put yourself out there? What do you have for them?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could just relate that to my experience here. One of my experiences here was I had no idea about this, didn't know what this was.
Yeah.
And it's, lightning demos, right? And this whole idea of, hey, it's amazing that the idea that, hey, they put together the schedule of all these demos. We want to see these talks. We want to hear these things. but they put aside a couple of hours where it's like, hey, PowerShell community, you have 5 to 7 minutes, and just anyone can sign up and demo something that you do, right? And that encouragement, the encouragement to do this, the idea like, hey, we want to hear from you. You are a part of this community. You know, you can do this, right? And not only participating in it, but listening to it was great. It was one of the highlights, right? Because you get there and you see people kind of just like you, doing things just like you, but maybe a little different. And you see, hey, I wrote this script and I did this thing to solve this problem. And here, let me show you how it worked. That was awesome. That's great. And then to actually have the opportunity to do that kind of thing myself. And, you know, when you think about it, you're like, no, I can't do that. I'm not, yeah. but no, this is like this. And it was in the largest room, and it was so much support there. Right. And people were generally like, yeah, that was great. That was cool. I love that. Hearing about that, learning about that. Just to go back to what you said, right? We all have something to contribute. And so my experience has been that, yes, it's great. The smartest people are the people that you think, have all the largest accolades and things like that. They are very genuine in listening and hearing and wanting to learn something from you. Yes, you have something, to contribute. And like I said, it's one thing to hear the cliche, and it's one thing to like, okay, whatever. I've heard the marketing stuff and stuff before, but to experience it has been different. I'm almost kind of feel a little like, you know what? I kind of prejudged a little bit, but giving it a chance, go ahead, take that risk, take that step. It's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it.
I mean, we have to judge situations based on our experiences in the past. And how awesome is it when you can take a little bit of a risk, calculated risk to make sure you're going to be okay, and then have it be a positive experience. Mm-hmm. You can take that with you going forward. And you mentioned the lightning demos, which shout out to Phil Bossman for putting those together.
Shout out, for sure.
There's a whole bunch of people who've sort of journeys in PowerShell and contributing to the community. That's been the launch point, was the lightning demo. It was low enough risk to where they felt comfortable taking it, and they did it. And afterwards they saw, oh my gosh, they had that good data. They had that, I was okay. Maybe there was a hiccup here or there, but at the end they clapped and people came up and they learned something like, oh my gosh, all I had to do was share a small thing that I learned from my perspective, from whatever you're doing, whatever technology, whatever level, beginner, expert, it's all valuable.
Yeah. The most exciting thing that happens here is that you say you did a lightning demo, or you walk out of a talk, or, you're talking to someone else, and there's someone you don't know walks up to you and says, hey, me too. Right. And then you just have this conversation. Hey, I've been working on that. Like literally, just walking down the hall before I came here, one of my goals was, I'm going to figure out Pester. It's been a problem. I've been trying to, I've had a lot of, false starts, trying to get into it. And literally, not even talking directly, just sitting down in the hall, I hear someone come out of a different talk and say, I just came out of a talk about test-driven Pester. You write the example, you write the test, then you write the code. And I'm like, yes, I needed to hear that, yes. Right? And it was so great. So there's just so much people, just that experience of just everyone just willing to talk and willing to share. And then it's funny because you don't know. You walk out of something and you're talking to somebody about your specific problem that you're having with a share or management or something, and then you turn around and find out, oh, they wrote the code for for AI shell. You're like, what? It's so great. There's no egos here. It's been an amazing experience.
I think Haley earlier said iron sharpens iron. And it's true. We're all in this together. One person being their authentic selves, leading the way, being humble, makes it easier for the next person to follow suit.
Right. I'm thinking back now on one of Don Jones' talks and talking about the whole be the master and this whole experience of like the whole apprenticeship and master and the guild. Right. And that's what this is. This is the guild of PowerShell. Right. And what is that whole thing? That guild, being part of a guild, it's like you have this kind of membership, this kind of this, like you said, still sharpens steel. We are kind of in this together mentality. And that's definitely here. And it's that idea of we're going to all push each other forward.
Yeah.
You know, it's not even just steel sharpen steel in terms of like we're banging against each other. It's like, no, we are pushing ourselves in a wave together. We're moving forward together into these new things. And that's what also has been very exciting, even in some very technical talks, getting great perspective on, hey, wait, stop, sit back. Why are you writing this? What purpose is this serving? How are you adding value? Are you doing this just because someone handed you this task, you feel that you have to do it, or you feel productivity is writing a bunch of code? But no, you know, so there's so much talk here about just like evaluating and leading from within and like adding business value and things like that in a real practical sense,
I'm curious to prod on something and also share some feedback I have for you.
Okay.
My observations of you so far, you know, we've talked a little bit on the record here and also off the record. And I got to say, you're incredibly well-spoken. And that's one thing. You have a great spoken voice, but also I've noticed that you're really intelligent in terms of you can have multiple points in your head and you craft the narrative, right? Earlier in a previous conversation, you said, like, I want to say three things. You did one, you got into detail, you connected two, and you circled back to three. Circling back to Snover's talk now, he talked about soft skills, career progression. As you move further up, you use these soft skills. You seem to have an exceptional amount. I'm curious, do you have plans on using that to your advantage more? Like, what do you view a potential career progression for you to be?
Wow. Thank you, man. Great question, because it's funny because I was listening to you talk to Haley on that point, and I had like this, like a realization when during that talk. And I guess the first realization was, man, I'm getting old because it's like, you know, I don't know. It's just like this. I'm having these like, you know, wise sayings pop in my head and things like that. But these realizations. And when it comes to the soft skills thing, I listened to Snover's thing about the soft skills and things like that. And the realization I had was, I think what happens is a lot of times we do that kind of idea. We think, okay, I'm going to start off in tech and I'm doing this thing and I'm going to develop these very strong, hard skills. And then I'm going to advance. Then eventually I'm going to need to get into these soft skills. And what I realized while you guys were talking was, no, you need those soft skills from the very beginning. Those soft skills are important. Even when you first, a lot of times we talk about, we all came up through the trenches, right? Many of us came up through the trenches. You know, you start off in help desk support. In fact, that's one of the best things because as the help desk support, you are the face to IT to most people.
Oh, yeah. You're the
because
reputation.
Most people don't understand what IT does.
Yep.
And so those actually developing and understanding those soft skills, or even if we look at developers on the developer side, right? You know, you're on a team. You may feel like you're in the lowest ring of the pole, but actually those are the times where those soft skills are the most important. How do you think you get to where you're trying to get? So it was like this thing just went off in my head while you guys were talking. It was like, no, there's so many things that sometimes are, they call it like, you know, common knowledge or, common sense that are these tropes and things we hear, but they don't necessarily serve us, right? They're not necessarily what's really actually effective. And I see things, I just solve things then where it's like, you know what? This idea of soft skills is important, whether or not it's conscious or not. You need to get along with your teammates. It's equally important as a manager and as a contributor to have the ability to communicate, to hear others, because to Haley's point, you have to be able to say, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Yeah, I'm the guy assigned to solve this task. Can you talk to me about it? Can you explain to me what we're doing? You know, those skills are important, even then. Not to go to answer your question.
See, that's what I'm saying. The big picture thing. You gave a great thing.
I think I'm not good at all. I think I did recognize early on that I knew, say as a young person, you know, I had an interest in math and science and physics and things like that, right? And looking back, talk about the idea of giving back to community, I'm recognizing how as a younger person, there were a lot of people who helped me along the way, who encouraged me.
Yeah.
You know, as a young African-American boy that said, yeah, I like math and science. People were like, you do? Here, we have some program. Here's a club. Here's this. And kept that going for me. And then I joined different organizations and stuff as I got to college and things like that. And it all helped to keep me in this space of I went to school. I was interested in being an electrical engineer. Went to school for electrical engineering, and eventually did get my degree in electrical engineering. But I also knew I had this kind of gift of gab, you would say. And I remember when I was maybe in high school, there was a club called MESA, Math, Engineering, Science Achievement I was in. And I got a chance to go and visit. It was a IC, a chip manufacturer here in San Diego, and to shadow an engineer and see what they do. So I go to the office and I get to see this engineer, and he's a hardware chip designer, and he's sitting there and he's, wearing this suit, and he has this cool computer with at the time 2 monitors. Was like, I'm not going to date myself, but it was a long time ago. And he's showing me his designs of the chip and all this kind of stuff. Like, wow, man, that's so cool. And he was maybe, middle-aged gentleman, older gentleman. And I just it stuck out in my mind. And he says, hey, you see that person over there? And he points to like a young lady that was over there in the corner. And she was easily half his age. And he goes, that's my manager. He says, she doesn't even have a degree in engineering. She doesn't understand this. She's in business, and she's my manager. Right? And the lesson I kind of learned from that was, the technical expertise was not necessarily what put the people who were in charge, right? And so there is an importance to those soft skills, or at least there's an understanding of something beyond just the technology, right? What is the purpose? What is it serving? You go to work for a company. One thing that's interesting about IT is needed in all aspects. And that's why it's a great industry. You can go and work in so many different industries, do something. But sometimes we look at it as, well, I'll just do my thing and put our heads down and like, well, I manage servers. I manage email servers. I do this, I do that. But, if you understand the role IT has in the business, and like I've heard, and nothing I'm coming up with, stuff I'm hearing from, other very smart people. You hear this a lot. Every business is a technology business nowadays. Every company is a technology company nowadays.
Yes.
And so it's important for us to understand our role and what it plays in the business.
Yeah.
So that if you want to be able to advance in a way in your career, although Jeffrey did a great presentation about how to advance as an individual contributor, if you want to stay in that kind of role, but it's also a type of company and a type of space that you can do that in. You need to basically have an understanding. And one of the things that I think I heard from someone else also was, the idea that IT is a misnomer, so I think of IT as business technology, the technology of doing business. And so I think there needs to be a culture shift or a paradigm shift also with, management and things like that, of understanding the role that IT has in business. It's not, I think IT historically has been looked upon as a cost of doing business, and not this can enable business and enable business value. And what it takes, what I got from one of Don's talks about leadership was, we can have that vision from within, and so it'll change the way you approach your work. It'll change your way. I can remember almost vividly the time where my help desk job changed from a help desk job to pay the bills to a career.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, the only difference, my job the day before and my job the day after were the same, but everything was different from that day forward because I looked at what I did differently.
Yeah.
And it drove things forward in a different way.
And I think we deserve to have that ownership of our careers and to not just feel like we're clocking in and, no agency in where we can go. It feels good to take control of that to a certain extent. We need time to grow and things like that, but there's something really special about that. And you said, every company is a technology company. And I think that is definitely worth noting. Also worth noting, you said, business technology, but it's also worth noting that without everything else, IT'd be useless. Like, what does it empower? Everything else.
Exactly.
And you have to be able to have those skills to break down those and understand the business. So, I think you have a very mature perspective on companies, business, how IT fits in it.
I've gotten there, and part of it is related a lot to your talk with Haley, right? And this idea of empowering yourself in your business, and part of that there is responsibility. I do believe in that that idea that's out there about extreme ownership and things like that.
Yeah.
But also on the business side, is recognizing that when you invest in people, that is your highest return,
For sure.
right? And so, and maybe we've noticed this in our careers. When we're in a certain place where we feel underpaid and undervalued, then it is just a job. But when you get to a certain place where you feel comfortable and your needs are met, that is where we become human beings and do what human beings do, and not survive what animals do, right? But also I realized I didn't answer your original question. You're talking about going back. So what do I see for myself going forward?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'll become a host of a podcast.
Yeah, that's a path. It's a path.
No, it was definitely. I think I would be interested in definitely coming back and having the opportunity. I'll try to submit for something for presenting. And that's what it is. It's about, there's that quote about, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yes.
Right. But I think more to your point about business technology and understanding at the same time, what we do is nothing if it wasn't for them or the business or what's happening. And understanding it's a symbiotic relationship,
Yes.
right? Understanding that we're all in this together, right? And I think a lot of the common mentality and structure that's been set up is a lot about just focusing on self in terms of, it's great to focus on yourself in terms of your career, what you're doing for yourself and being healthy and being happy, but understanding your role and place in the structure, in the company, in society, in your community is very important, because as anyone will say, as any good leader will tell you, I think I remember hearing some stuff like when these famous tech leaders that started off in tech and became CEOs, I'm talking about like Zuckerberg's and the Jobs and stuff like that, their job no longer became about doing the tech. It's about becoming a leader of a company. And that becomes about having other people buy into your vision. And so, that understanding that we can get as IT professionals as far as understanding what is the goal that our company has and how we're all working together to reach that goal. And it's funny because that's what DevOps, right?
Yeah.
Is all about, right? That's what DevOps is all about.
1,000,000%. Now, it's been a pleasure getting to know you. And you mentioned presenting next year. And one thing I love to do is co-present with people. If you're ever interested in maybe putting in some CFPs for next year, I'm just throwing it out there. I ask it on the pod, a little extra pressure on you. Oh. You don't have to answer here. We can have a follow-up after this. But hey, who knows what the future holds? It's always great when you put yourself out there. It's like casting a net. The more you do it, the bigger fish you can catch. And kudos to you for putting yourself out there and having good experience afterwards. So,
and my takeaway then, what I'll say is like, yes, there is nothing. Everyone, please, they should get flooded with, what do they call CFPs?
Yeah,
flooded. Of course, not everyone can be picked. Not everyone can do things. And I think it's not about that. I think it's about the fact that this is a community. This is, you hear those buzzwords. This is a safe space. But, if we could, I'm sure if you guys could do everyone, you guys would. Because like you said, there's something that everyone says, that everyone has that, that is useful to someone else. I guess to say it in a Don Jones kind of way would be, because this is what he said was, someone stupid gets born every day, So there's someone who doesn't know what you know.
Yes.
And that is powerful. Think about it. There's someone who doesn't know what you know. And so this mentality is, well, I'm not doing all that cloud stuff and I'm not doing all, no, you know something about PowerShell. You know something about system management. You know something about end user management. You know something about that is of value to someone else, someone new, someone coming up. What would you wish that you had heard?
Yes. That is it.
That is it. And there's your topic.
Yes.
And there's value there.
1,000,000%, because, you mentioned there's someone who needs to learn. Guess what? You 2 years ago, 2 days, whatever that is a perspective that doesn't know what you know now. What have you learned? What's different? What would you tell yourself and build off of that?
Yeah.
Awesome, Asmar. Well, it was awesome chatting with you.
Thank you so much, man, for your time. I know you've been putting in the work, putting in the hours. We're burning the wee light hours. Last call has come and gone.
Yes.
But Andrew is still here.
We're having fun. It's community. We're having a good time.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I appreciate it so much.
My pleasure, man. Thank you.
Okay.
You look like you've used a mic before.
I am a musician.
Okay. What kind of music? What kind of instrument?
I play everything.
Okay.
But for the most part, I play guitar and I sing. I used to be in some rock bands in the past, and I have a online project out there called 7mm Lyre.
Cool.
And I put some music out there just for fun.
Yeah.
I think it's similar to like the PowerShell stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's you just got to put something out there. It might not be good,
Yes.
but it's fun, right? And that's important.
Yep.
You got to have hobbies. You
A
gotta
million
have
percent.
something that we enjoy.
I think on that, because I don't talk about it a lot on the podcast, but I'm also into music. Currently, it's not one of my main hobbies, but I find a lot of parallels with music and programming in a lot of ways, right? Once you understand music theory, it's all quite simple. Kind of like a lot of things in IT. It like appears like, oh my gosh, you're a prodigy. Because you can, it's like, to be honest, like, yeah, there's some finger like stuff that you have to, it's just muscle memory. And when you understand how music theory or whatever the science behind whatever you're doing is, it becomes a lot easier.
Well, and like just like IT, there's a lot of rules that are meant to be broken, right? That's what makes things interesting to us, is when something doesn't follow the way we thought it was supposed to work. We look at it play out, and we go, oh, that is not what I would have used that for, but that's an interesting idea. We saw that today at the conference with the PSD1 files that they were using effectively as JSON files.
Yeah, like configuration stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I've only ever used them as manifest files for my modules and just to describe my modules and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I never thought to be like, oh, actually, technically they are a data type, right? Like, they're a JSON you can dump data into. It's not that far off from thinking about what should happen.
But
it was an interesting idea. And I think I see that at parallel in music where, like, someone's playing a chord that shouldn't work after something else. And that actually made it interesting. That's what I like to hear. Is when something doesn't do what I expected. You know, I'll give the parallel here of AI music and AI scripting, right?
Yeah.
AI scripting is boring. It is. You see a script and you're like, yeah, I guess. There's nothing interesting here. There's nothing surprising. There's even the extra effort it takes to put in commandlet binding or validate parameters or, you know, those little extra bits.
Yeah.
Well, if you've ever worked with like any of the AI music programs out there, it's the same thing. It's just like, oh, you're just playing the regular chord progressions, 5, 4, 1. You know, I'm listening to the same Axis of Evil chords. You know, like if you've ever heard of them, the pop chords, and it sounds good. And sure, it's auto tuned, but have you ever listened to someone like Blaze Foley?
no,
Blaze Foley is a man who played a lot of country music. He was a horribly broken alcoholic who could never make it in the proper music industry, but was responsible for some of the most influential songs out there, right? And if you heard his live stuff, it sounded more soulful, more connecting, right? Like, as a human, I felt more connected to him than any Britney Spears song, than anything that had an auto-tune on it. Almost like the mistakes were what made it human, were what I wanted to see. I see some of these quirks like in PowerShell modules, you know, where like you ever work with the Exchange team's PowerShell modules? They don't serialize right? Like they don't work in the pipeline quite right. But I feel that connection with them, that kind of like they were just trying to get something done, you know, and I feel that. And it almost means more to me than when something works perfectly. I don't know why that is. If that makes any sense to you.
It makes so much sense. Earlier today, I gave a talk. 10 minutes of the talk, we did not have any video whatsoever.
Yeah.
You just got to roll with the punches. And to me, like if we did have video, it would have been a good talk.
Yeah.
I've given good talks before. That's awesome. I'm be happy with that win. But if something goes wrong, I showed everyone else, hey, it's going to really be okay. Take a chance, put yourself out there. I survived. I'm okay. You know, we salvaged something. But it also gives like a launching point. Life has a lot of highs and lows. If you get those lows, man, that's a really memorable kind of experience to reflect on in the future. I don't think I introduced you. So who am I speaking with today?
Absolutely.
No, we're just talking.
My name is Luis Orta. I am a cloud systems engineer for Yakima Valley Farmers Clinic, one of the largest community health centers in the country.
Wow.
We have between 40 and 50 locations over Oregon and Washington, just in little clinics. Our job is basically to put clinics where doctors don't normally live, right? Where healthcare doesn't normally exist. So when we put a clinic somewhere, it's because there's a need in that community, and the normal market forces wouldn't make that happen, right? Wow. We want to kind of make sure that it doesn't matter where you live, you have healthcare. And obviously, given the name of the company, Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic, we mostly deal with farm workers, right? These are people in rural communities who feed the country, literally.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud to work for them, you know, and as a cloud systems engineer, which kind of sounds wild to say when you're mixing those words together. My job's really to make sure that they can do that with the least amount of friction possible, with all the tools they need, with all the uptime, right? Because you think about, we're deploying in rural places where there's hardly any internet connections, right? So part of the challenges are, how do we make sure that they stay up, that they can continue to see, you know, that one kid with all the lung issues because of all the spray he inhaled, all the years he was picking cherries, you know? That's the kind of stuff we do. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think one thing I talk about on the podcast sometimes is like being connected to the impact that your work does. And even if you maybe don't work at the most company like yours, where it's really easy to draw those connections to like, holy crap, you are really empowering a lot of good. And it also touches on like how technology powers the world. Like you mentioned farmers and like healthcare, and like that is IT driving that. And that's PowerShell to a certain extent. Like, you know, we have the opportunity to contribute in that way. But it makes it a lot easier to want to do a good job and take ownership of things when you feel the impact. And to circle back just slightly, I mentioned yours is easy to make connections with. And if you're working at a company where it's like, oh, how do we make the rich richer kind of thing, you can make your teammates' lives better. So they are real people. They are real people. And if you make things more efficient, if you're a kind person to them, you can impact their lives. And if their lives are impacted, your life is impacted.
Absolutely. And, you know, you would think, generally speaking, that everyone would feel that way. I'll say not everyone does. Sometimes people are driven by different things, and recognizing what people are driven by is important. Myself, yes, that's what drives me, right? My learning, my wanting to make change in my communities, my all that, right? Not everyone's driven that way, and that's okay, actually. That's another thing that, like, I think we get too far into everyone's got to be the most productive and the most whatever, right? And no, you don't. Everyone needs a job. Everyone needs to find their place in society and whatever.
Get in where you fit in. Yep.
Yeah, and recognizing that your coworkers might not be driven the way that you are is not a bad thing. It helps you figure out, how do I make this important to them?
Yes.
So for some people, you know, you write a module or whatever, the point of it is to make their job easier, and their incentive to join you is that their lives get easier. For other people, it might be, listen, my job is the button I click, and until my boss tells me to click a different button, I don't click a different button.
Yeah.
And that's fine. You work with their boss and you talk to them, and maybe they see the value. And if no one sees your value, well,
that's a problem.
You know, you do something else. But I've been lucky enough to be at a place where people saw the value in what I was trying to do. They joined me. I can very proudly say that the repositories I work on, from the code that I work on, has way more. 60% of the code is no longer mine. And that's so cool.
So awesome.
To see it outgrow me.
Yeah.
To see it like, oh, that's now other people who commit to that code base that isn't me. And I somehow, through some weird way, managed to convince enough people that this was a good idea that now not only, that it makes their lives easier, but we make communities better. We make things possible in places where it wouldn't normally be. And everyone can feel good about that, even if that wasn't originally your intention, right? Like maybe your intention was just to make your life easier. And then you can stop and go, oh, but not only that, now I get to make sure the country literally gets fed.
Yeah. I think when you're doing things that are, what I say, directionally correct, a lot of incentives are going to align. Mm-hmm. If you're the type of person who's motivated by financial gain, there's an avenue to pursue that while also doing a ton of good. And it's the correct approach. Yeah. Because, cover it a lot, but it's awesome to hear that so many others see that same vision. It's not like, one person is like kind of the only one. It's like we're all sort of coming to this realization. It's been so cool to see the kind of collective intelligence. The DevOps movement to begin with was like a total perspective changer, Phoenix Project kind of thing. And now to be, growing off the shoulders of that. And I'm very interested to see where things are in 3 to 5 years as we keep growing upon these previous lessons. I'm curious to hear about how you find your way here. Is this your first year here?
This is my first year here. And I got here because of Googling, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah.
I had a budget of money that my organization was very kind to give to me to find something that would help the organization. And there's a bit of a self-interest here in that I'm very interested in automation and PowerShell, that kind of thing. But I knew that if I came here, I could talk to other professionals who did the same things I did, had the same challenges I did. I could have those conversations with them to be like, well, how'd you fix it? And in some ways, to even humble myself and be like, everyone uses duct tape. It's okay. It's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you stay in that, right? There's definitely the gold standards out there that you're like, oh, there's something else I should be working towards. And I want to make sure we keep working towards those. But it's also okay to know that I had certain business challenges that I had to meet, and I met them. And I'm here with people who also did the same thing. And I can at least have that camaraderie. I don't know if that makes sense. That kind of understanding with each other, that we're kind of in the same boat.
Yep. That validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think earlier you mentioned you have the company was kind enough to send you.
Yes.
That is kind of what we talked about earlier, directionally correct. Sure, They're kind, but also they're smart. They are going to empower someone who wants to do good. They're going to empower you to potentially do more good. That is self-serving also. Like, it's directionally correct in a lot of different ways. Obviously, the dollars have to make sense.
They do.
And, it can be challenging to go to a conference every year for some people in some ways, but it's about finding the opportunity for you to connect with the community. If that's going to shameless plug, a weekly PowerShell meetup like PowerShell Wednesdays, every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. Discord.gg/PDQ, or the RTP SUG, or all these different opportunities, or maybe it's a developer or .NET, whatever it is for your niche, you need to be finding these opportunities to connect. There are amazing opportunities like a conference where you get day after day of communication, safety, collaboration, and there's also smaller ways where online, social media, Discord communities, whatever it is for you, you have to find those ways to find others because it'll expedite your growth process.
You're totally right. And that's a good point. I think I thought of it more of how can I serve rather than how am I being served as well. And that's a really good point. And I think after coming here too, I may have been a little bit stale in what I'd been doing for a little while. And it was a good wake up or reboot, I think, to come to the PowerShell conference. Maybe I subconsciously knew that. I'm not sure. But something kind of told me if I came here, I know that it was going to reawaken something in me. And there's more to come now. Like, I know that out of here, once I'm gone from here, things are going to change.
Yeah,
I've had some great practices. I've done a lot of great work to bring people together on a code base, on a project, on a goal. But it doesn't end here. After being here, I got a little lazy for a while, and I felt it. And I think it's okay now that I've come here. This is what kind of reawakened it. I was like, I wish I'd done this sooner. This is my first time at this, by the way.
Yeah.
And even if I'd paid my way here, there's I don't know how to quantify the value I would have gotten in my lifetime from coming to something like this.
It's so hard to measure.
It is, from talking to people like you or the guys back there, or, so many people I've talked to, even just meeting people like Don Jones, right? I read his book.
Yeah.
And I got to sit down at a table and sing with him.
Yes, the filth thing.
The filth thing. That was wild. I was sitting here going, what is my life right now? I'm here singing with Don Jones, and then sat in a different conference with Jeffrey Snover, literally sitting in front of me while I'm watching Don Jones. And I'm like, it's not like I sat behind him. It just happened this way. I'm like, what is my life right now? This feels like, I don't know. It connected me in a way that I was like, I shouldn't stop. I should make sure I'm continuing, even if there's pieces of this where I have my morals and all that around automation and whatever, but it helps me continue in a way that keeps me feeling like I'm contributing and helping people in a way that I couldn't do any other way. I don't know how to describe this.
You gotta feel it to kind of understand. I feel like it's. I don't like the term magic, to describe things that are hard to measure. Like, coding isn't magic, but something about the spirit in the air when people get together, they feel safe. They're doing their thing. There's something magical about that.
Yeah, there really is. And magic is probably the best way to describe it, because when you look at the reality of the numbers and the dollars and cents, I know it sounds bad. I don't care about that. I care about helping people, and I care about that magic. Yep. You know what I mean? And I think most of us who do the automation and who really care about this work, that's what we're about. Sure, we learn to measure business impact. We learn to do the dollars and cents because we have to.
Yes.
But that's not what drives us. That's not what pushes us, right? Most of us aren't rich at the top of a penthouse living a crazy life,
Yeah.
We don't have millions of dollars in stock options. We care about the impacts we have. That's more important to us than the amount of dollars in our bank accounts for most of us.
Yes.
Maybe some of us do, but that's how I feel about it. And I, as long as that's there, I don't ever see myself stopping to do this.
I think for me, that what you're talking about is like, it's a renewable resource if you approach things that way. Like, it's a lot easier to be driven for a long time and do whatever you're doing consistently if you are doing it for reasons that don't make you feel bad and aren't isolating. If we hear people like they chase the money too much and then it results in not the greatest thing. It's important to get to a place where you and your family are healthy and happy and able to pay your bills. But at a certain point, this isn't something that I just discovered. This is a very known thing, right? At a certain point, there's very high diminishing returns on additional income. Now, if you want to do great things in the world, you need income. Like, you need capital to do things with. But to be happy, that's not the case. So it's important about finding that balance between you feel appreciated, dollars, but also the people around you make you feel good. You feel like you have something to contribute. You feel like the effort and the hours. We spend more time at work than we do with our families, most of us, right? You need to make sure that time is well spent, because that is ultimately your life experience. These careers, they slip away from us. We have to work, most of us, right? We can't retire at 20. So making that good. I talked earlier today about, making the time in the PowerShell terminal good. You're going to be there forever. It's the same thing about your work environment, the way you approach things. You need to do it in a way that's renewable, it's sustainable, so you can continue building brick by brick.
So you have something to make it worth it.
Yes. Yes.
Well, there you go, man. I don't know if that
was perfect, man.
That was good. Okay.
Great meeting you.
Yeah, it was great meeting you too, dude. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.